I'm so happy that you're speaking out on this issue.
Awesome.
I hope you know that this is a very pro-life church that does a lot about abortion. A. B. Totally with you on your message. If my child had died, I wouldn't want him on a poster like that. I really don't think you're doing much good for that cause.
You got to expose the victims of a Holocaust, man.
You're right, but you were also disrespecting those victims by putting their picture.
No, I'm actually respecting children who are living in the womb and seeking to rescue them from death and seeking to change the culture. Like now this child's death means something, you know? Now we can use the picture of this child to expose this evil so that people wake up, you know? There's reasons why we have photographs of the dead Jews in the Nazi Holocaust so that people wake up.
There is a place for that.
Matt,
I'm Abby.
Nice to meet you.
We're expecting our first, so obviously we feel strongly. Our child has Down syndrome.
Okay.
We're not aborting, obviously.
Of course.
You know, so you know, this is an emotional issue for both of us.
And there's a place for those pictures. It is not in front of a church with children and pregnant women walking out the door.
Children are going to see this wherever we go, man.
I get it, but I don't think you're doing the right thing. You are disturbing people who believe in your cause.
They need to be disturbed because they say that abortion is murder, but they do not live their lives like children are being mass murdered. I've gone many times to the place down the street where they mass murder children on Wednesdays and Saturdays on Roosevelt Road. There's only like one family from this church that goes out there.
Actually, I think they
have two families. There's one guy and then there's another family. Okay, there should be thousands of people at that place. I don't see a lot of people. I'm saying on Saturday morning, a lot of people don't have a lot going on. Where are their priorities? If they know when and where children are being mass murdered, they should be there, right? If they really care, if they really acknowledge that people are getting mass murdered, they're going to be there. But there's very few people out there.
So I'm not there, and yet here we are.
But there's
not there all the time.
to address it.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah,
yes.
You can't assume that everybody who doesn't address a very important issue in your way is not addressing it. That is judging people in a way that God forbids. Everybody serves God in a way that they're called to do. I'm not called to preach. I'm not called to go to Cambodia or something. I am called to serve God in my family, my community, in a way that He's called me to do, including speaking out against abortion.
And you're called to love your neighbor as yourself, and we should prioritize the needs of our neighbors. And if we need to think about, is it really loving if we know when and where people are being mass murdered, and we're just like, that's not my calling, you know? Because what are we doing with our time? You know, what are you doing when you know when and where children are being murdered? Are you sleeping in your bed? Is that love? No, we need to think about what does my neighbor need from me? Am I really loving this person when they're about to die and I know when and where it's going to happen and I don't care enough to go out and try to stop it?
And I so love your heart there, my friend. Here's the thing. If I see a homeless guy on the street, is the answer always and everywhere to give him $1 million and bring him into my home? No.
No, but you should help him.
Yes.
Sometimes I should, but sometimes that means giving him a handout. Sometimes that means buying a meal. Sometimes that means voting for community change. Sometimes that means inviting him to church. There are different responses in different situations. If I go to an abortion center every Saturday and protest, that might be my calling. I am not guaranteed that that will do any good, that will stop anyone from getting an abortion. It might. If God calls me to it, it will. But I don't know. And so everybody needs to follow, needs to speak out on that issue in the way that God has called them to do. You cannot tell anyone exactly how God has called them to speak.
Well, no, I'm saying,
might be talking to the woman who's single and befriending her and putting her into community, because otherwise she would have an abortion. There's lots of different ways to do it. This may be one way, but what we're trying to say is this is not the only way. It doesn't mean that
I'm not saying it's the only thing we need to do, that everybody has to do this, but I'm saying a lot of people, in order to bring a quick end to abortion, in order to shut those places down, a lot of people are needed. I'm saying the children need a lot of people to go out there. They need a lot of people to do this kind of work. So we need to address an issue according to the need that's there, right? Not just according to this is what makes me comfortable in my comfort zone and this is my little niche. No, we need to move outside our comfort zone when our neighbor needs us to do something for them.
I absolutely agree. However, the unborn baby might not need you at the abortion clinic.
But I'm saying they do.
He might need you befriending his mother. He might might need you leading your family in a way that it is an example to unbelievers and people who are confused about the value of life. There are so many needs.
There are.
I think that maybe you don't mean to, but you are unintentionally judging, giving an impression that you are judging other believers for their actions that may be just as good in the Lord as yours. Also, you are spreading disturbing imagery where it does. There are places where it needs to, but where it does not. Look at that baby. Does she need to see this? No. You're spreading.
The babies are going to see it everywhere we go.
It does not need to be spread. There is a time and a place for this. Absolutely. Amen. This is not it.
People are not living their lives like children are being mass murdered.
Sir.
I've grown up in Christianity in this country, sir. I've grown up in the church. I was led astray by so many Christian people who never acted like children were being mass murdered. So I didn't think they were. I was deceived by the people who were leading me.
Sir. Maybe you don't know the character of this church and you are falsely judging it.
What is the appropriate response when we know when and where kids are going to be mass murdered? Is it for us to all stay home? Because what I see is all these people, most of these people staying home.
Yes, I would say
and that's not an appropriate response. I'm saying children need us to go and shut down the clinic by putting our bodies in front of the doors by the thousands. That's the appropriate response.
That's not good. That's going to get you arrested. That's not going to change the issue.
No, it will make national news. It will change the culture when we all start acting like kids are actually being murdered.
You may be right. You may be wrong. Different people have different opinions on that, and that is okay. And if you're right, the way to convince people is not this.
I'm saying wake up. I'm saying wake up. This is your neighbor. This is what's happening. Yeah. I don't believe that people are really acknowledging that they're living in a Holocaust. I don't believe they're living with a sense of urgency.
We both agree with you there. We think people are asleep.
Yes, so that's why I need to wake them up with this, because they're asleep.
You're not waking them up, you're freaking them. I look at this and say, man, I was going to think about going to that clinic, but if people are going to act so inappropriately, maybe I don't want to associate with the pro-life.
Well, then they're focusing more on like me and how I feel and like my associations than about what does my neighbor need from me.
In Romans 14, it says that you need, and I'm not saying, I'm with you on that. You're right, and I'm not saying that's a good response in me. However, I'm saying that isn't the response you're going to provoke in people. And Romans 14 says that you need to tolerate the weaker brethren in your midst. You need to be gentle with Christians.
To exhort people to grow stronger in their faith.
Not like this, man.
There's two ways to do it. And I'm saying in some cases this might be a way to do it, but in other cases there are other calls for other people that are quieter. And
there might be.
You can't shut down the abortion clinics just by, like, if we could lay down our lives for it, we would, but you can't.
We could. I mean, thousands of people could have showed up to Planned Parenthood yesterday and shut it down. They could have. There's thousands of Christians.
You go to jail and people would come back the next day.
They wouldn't even be able to arrest all of us. There'd be thousands of us.
You would start a war. Do you want
exactly? We need a war. We need. No, we're not saying we're going to start like a civil war. We're going to like assault it with assault weapons.
No,
but we can start a cultural war. A spiritual battle.
A cultural war is fought with words and walks and sit-ins, not with blocking people from doors.
No.
If you block people from an abortion clinic, you are using force. And once you have used force, you have crossed the line.
No, you haven't. People are getting murdered. You need to use force sometimes.
Then if you need to cross that line, you're right. Like, for instance, if I'm in my home and someone's going to hurt my wife, I'm going to take them out.
Right.
Absolutely. There is a time to cross that line. You're right. However, you have to acknowledge that if you're willing to use force, you have crossed that line. And you need to bear the full consequences.
No, you're simply putting your bodies in front of the doorway to prevent people to go in.
So you are using force to...
Not necessarily. You're laying your life down, you're putting your body down, you're preventing people from going in to murder their children.
Are you presenting a physical obstacle? Are you keeping someone from doing something by
yes, and that's perfectly appropriate.
I'm just saying, I think both of us are saying, I don't think that's the way that you can really close down these clinics, because if you block one, they open another one, Because the problem is in the heart, obviously. But we'll recognize that these are babies.
Right, but part of us waking people up to the fact that they're real children is us acting consistently and acting like people are actually getting mass murdered, and our actions will demonstrate that.
Tell you this, I who don't go to an abortion clinic, who stays home and cares for my wife and my baby, I'm acting like mass murder is happening. I am. Someone who stays home from the abortion clinic on Saturday and spends the morning getting coffee with a single mom who's considering an abortion, he's acting like a mass murder is happening. It is so much more complex than you think it is. What I'm getting out of this conversation is, A, I feel more pro-life than ever before. I see how urgent it is. B, I don't want to associate with an organization that sees only one solution.
You don't have to associate with us, but I want you to take action, you know. I want people to take action. The problem is a lot of people have your mindset where it's not me, it's not my calling to do these certain actions. Sure. And I have to keep pushing people because so many people are like, no, this thing that children really need, that's not my methodology. I'm not called to that, you know. But I'm saying this is what people need, and most people are rejecting what these children need, that methodology that they need to happen.
Are you saying that because I think it's not my calling, I don't think I should give children what they need?
Well, I'm saying people need certain actions from you. They need certain actions from a lot of different people. But everybody's like, hey, those certain actions, that's not the actions I'm going to take. But then nothing ever gets done if everybody's like, that's not me,
America,
you know?
is more pro-life now than ever before. Abortions are at an all-time low. Things are happening.
I don't know if that's taking into account birth control.
I'm saying is whatever we've been doing, it's slowly but surely working. You need more, absolutely. But you can't assume that everybody is called to combat this issue in the same way as you.
I'm not saying every single person is, but I'm saying a lot of people are needed. You know, a lot of people are needed, and everybody's like, over and over and over again, the same response wherever I go. I go to church after church after church. Everybody's like, everyone's not called to do what you're doing. Well, who is called? You know, like there's only a few of us in this whole area. You know?
And maybe if you didn't use these, and maybe if you didn't talk about physically blocking people from going to abortion clinics, which is an act of force, which is an act of violence,
which is appropriate to block the doors. It is.
If you didn't talk about that, maybe you get a better response. Just maybe.
Well, I don't want a response from people who aren't like dedicated. Like I don't want like a weak sauce response. This kind of is a filter, or like it's like separates the wheat from the tares, kind of like the people who really care are not going to get offended by this. They're going to have compassion for the children, and they're going to be like, what can I do? And then the people who are selfish are going to be like, oh, don't show that to me or my children. I got to run away.
You are calling me selfish. You just called me selfish because that's what I said to you. No, let me get it clear here. I'm not getting mad. What I'm saying is you maybe unintentionally accuse me of being selfish.
Okay.
I am not selfish. Okay. I'm not bothered by this. I am bothered by the fact that children and my pregnant wife are seeing this. My problem is not that it's wrong to show these images. I think you're right that people need to face this fact. My problem is that you are doing it in an inappropriate location.
I'm saying children are going to see this wherever we go. If we go out in public to expose this, it needs to be exposed in the public. We need to reach people.
It's something that's hidden. People aren't seeing it.
Yes, and it needs to be brought to the light. Yes, and people need to wake up. You know,
do it to individials with pictures in your wallet. Don't show it to kids.
Okay.
For crying out
loud. Well, I think most kids actually have compassion when they see these children, and they're usually not traumatized. And if their parents educate them about it and tell them what's going on, then they'll have a good response.
Maybe you should leave that to their parents to decide what their kids want to see.
I mean, I am so on board. I'm at Anchor all the time.
Okay, awesome.
But Easter morning, really?
I'm. It's always time.
I know, but
to be here.
It's totally pro-life. We preach on it all the time, more than any other church I know in the community. We are totally on board.
Yeah, the thing is, the pro-life movement is perpetuating the problem. We have thousands of Christians who are voting for legislators who write bills that tell you when, where, and how you can murder children. As abolitionists, we don't support any politicians or legislation that regulates murder. We always call for write a bill that abolishes it at the state level and defies the federal government.
I know,
but we can't compromise. That's what's happening.
Easter morning is all about Jesus.
Yep.
And he made these precious babies. We get it.
Yep.
Today isn't the day.
It is the day, because tomorrow morning it's going to happen. Mass murder is going to happen.
You're not going to save any lives by protesting at a pro-life church.
No, by waking people up to the fact that they need to help these children. I can exhort people to take action, and they can be like, hey, I need to do something, and then they'll go do something.
Tomorrow.
I'm on our pro-life committee here. We are all in.
Okay.
But this really actually hurts our cause in our church.
Yes.
I don't think it does. Like people being awakened to the Holocaust they're living in shouldn't hurt the cause.
Can I tell you something? I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in a very secular area. I'm a philosophy PhD student. Pretty much half the people I know are communists. I mean, maybe kind of the you know. And when I hear people saying why they can't stand the pro-life movement, why they're pro-choice, it's stuff like this. And so
it's just more discrimination from them.
Okay, however, they're wrong. They're wrong. And I think you're right that they need to see this stuff. However, the ostentatious display of these things where it's not appropriate turns people off. Now, I'm with you that people need to see this, but there is an inappropriate way to do it. Just like if I want to bring someone to Christ, I will do that. There's a time when I need to tell them, you are dead in your sins and you are damned to hell unless you turn and repent and turn to Jesus and repent.
Right.
However, if I do that every day I see them, if I scream at them across the room, it's going to turn them away. Even though my message is right, even though the content, the turnover and content of the message is right, there is still a way to do it that is so wrong that it actually makes people more against you.
Well,
and I think that you're risking that.
They're against me because they're not acknowledging the urgency of the situation.
Right.
We need to demonstrate the urgency of the situation.
But you're doing it wrong.
This isn't the play.
Well, if they'd agree with me, they wouldn't be like, this isn't the place. You're showing that people don't agree with me by you coming and telling me that this isn't the place.
You're taking the focus off Jesus today.
Well, Jesus said, whatever you did not do for the least of these, you didn't do for me.
I know.
So
he also said, there is a time and place. He didn't heal everyone. There is a time and a place.
And it is the time and place when people are ignoring a Holocaust. It's time to wake up people up. Do you understand that in the Bible, God says that he hates the worship of people who are neglecting justice and mercy?
We're on the same side.
Sir,
so does God hate the worship of this church? People just sang praises to God, but they're probably ignoring a Holocaust. From the vast number of people in this culture who go to church, it's very obvious that most of them are not living their lives like they're in a Holocaust.
Did you see the children? Did you see the pregnant women? They actually are raising families, and they're raising families
good.
to impact the next generation.
Yes.
And instead of aborting, they're choosing these babies and choosing to show the people in their community that these are lives.
Yeah, and that's great.
What we're doing. And I know it's not as dramatic, and I know it's not
as exciting or emotional,
but it's real.
Yes.
And it is facing the Holocaust that is quietly occurring.
Think about this, sir. Jesus rose from the dead in the middle of the night. Nobody saw him do it. The most important event in all of human history happened in total silence, with nobody watching.
Yep.
Think about that this Easter.
And these people are hidden away. They're silent. They don't have a voice. They need to be revealed. It needs to be exposed. Injustice needs to be exposed so that people wake up, because they need to wake up. Many people are asleep.
Nobody disagrees with you.
Okay, and this is a good way to wake people up. It is.
It's not the only
problem.
That's what we are doing it here. I promise we are.
So everybody in here refuses to vote for pro-life politicians?
Everyone in here, I don't know how people...
I think that's very unlikely.
Answer that question. However, sir,
I think most Christians are voting for guys who are like, hey, I'm pro-life, and then they regulate murder.
I can't answer that. I think that there may be situations where that's okay, and we can debate.